Hey Human podcast host Susan Ruth here with the Fearless Storyteller.
That's me. That's you.
That's us. And so for people who may not know who you are, what would you like to share about yourself? That's the canned question.
All right. My name is Susan Ruth. Hail originally from Seattle. Spent
Mm,
13 years in Nashville, Tennessee as a professional songwriter. I still write songs. And I have a podcast called Hey Human
mm-hmm.
Podcast. Let's see what else. I'm an abstract painter, a writer, and I just finished the conservatory program through level 5 at the Second City Hollywood.
That's
And
amazing. What does that mean? What is that? Yeah, okay, so there's a level there. So what does that mean?
the conservatory program, you audition for the conservatory, you go through 3 audition processes through the entirety of the program. And it's improv and sketch comedy writing.
Those sound like great skills and
Absolutely. It's a blast.
it sounds intimidating to have levels.
I will not lie, I was very nervous to audition, having no real experience, nothing tangible. I did take a 1 through 3 improv course, a fast track, if you will, at the Second City, and one of my teachers in that said, "Hey, you should audition for the conservatory," and I said, "Okay." So there we are. Yeah, and then there's another audition again after level 3.
That sounds stressful.
Yeah, and then after you graduate from the conservatory 1 through 5, then there's something called the grad review, where you write and perform an hour sketch show, and that also requires an audition. But my cohorts and I decided that we would wait until we were post Zoom performance and could do it in person again, because the last 2 levels of the conservatory that I was involved in, everything was done on Zoom.
Yeah.
Which is a great skill, but
it is. So, okay, so it wasn't something you had a background in. What possessed you to do that?
The devil. My brother, my older brother, has been doing improv for a very long time, and he was historically quite shy. And I watched him blossom. I know it's a weird thing to say about an older sibling, but he certainly blossomed from the improv, and I would see him do some performances here and there. And it was so much fun to watch. And it was interesting. I was in Nashville, and this would have been this is kind of a long story, about a year and a half ago, I guess. I was in Nashville, and I woke up one morning and I thought, man, I wonder if Nashville has an improv group, because that looks like so much fun, and I sure wish I could do that. I should figure out how to do that. And I'm not kidding, within a couple hours, my brother called me on the phone out of the blue and said, "Hey, there's this really famous improv teacher coming to Seattle. His name is David Rosowski, and he's part of the Second City." And he had been part of the Second City. He's on his own now. But and he's teaching this weekend course. If I get this for you for your birthday, would you be willing to fly back to Seattle and take it with me? And I said, absolutely. So that began my journey. I had a blast. I loved doing it with my brother. And so that really set me on the path of that.
That's cool. I've taken a couple improv classes, like at different times, and I remember it was really fun. And it is intimidating in the sense of it's really a presencing exercise, and that can be jarring coming from the flow of just the ordinary day into that environment. Like, it takes a lot of energy to slow down and yet be that actively aware.
You have to be present. It requires listening, and it requires a partnership, and being willing to say, "I'm here for you," instead of "I'm here for myself." There's all those things working in tandem with each other.
Yeah, and like I imagine and it's fun. I'm stuck on that, because like on the one hand, if you come into that with those skills, some of those that self-work done, those foundations, I imagine it becomes like it shifts into something like that probably feels more natural as a fit. But I'm sure many people who go into it haven't developed those skills, and it might be an invitation, or it might be like this cultural acclimatization to those concepts
Well, one
that
could
could help
argue
people.
that life is improv in a constant motion, right? We're constantly, I mean, neither of us knew what we were going to say here, and here
Yeah,
we are saying it. So
yeah,
it's sort of all the same.
yeah. And there's a shift in life as a metaphor. There's like two ways you could approach it. There's with the no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to shut you down. Here's my idea. Let's do my thing, versus a yes and mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you gain from this? I mean, besides having fun and learning a bunch of cool skills and maybe having an emerging career in comedy? I don't know.
One of the things I love about performing improv is, beside it being a high wire act,
Mm.
is that there's an impermanence to it. Once it's done, it's done. You're never going to do that again. And so to walk away from that without obsessing over what just happened, because it doesn't matter. It was its own thing. Now it doesn't exist anymore. And you can move forward. And I love that. And I love the idea of really being present to another person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think it really improved that skill in me as well. I mean, the podcast helps, obviously, because you interview people, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not dissimilar.
Yeah. So what's for you? You've had this journey of like creativity, and you kind of fall in this bucket of does lots of stuff. Yeah, right. And like, what's the common thread between being a songwriter and a painter and improv and podcast host and those things?
Truth with a capital T.
Hmm.
Across the board, that is what links all of it together.
Is it a search for truth, or?
I think in part it's a search for truth. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask people so many questions. But I think it's a willingness to be in truth with a capital T.
Oh.
Now, I know that in some cases, truth is subjective, but there are undeniable truths as well.
Yeah. So so willingness to be in truth suggests a discomfort with being in truth.
I think for some people it's yes, I think that for some people it's very uncomfortable to be in truth, whether they're in the presence of it, or whether they are feeling it within themselves. I believe that is, in my opinion, why there is so much outward angst and anger and frustration and turmoil, is it's so much easier to point a finger than to go inward and touch the truth of oneself.
Yeah. Yeah. And
it can be a difficult place to be.
It can be uncomfortable or joyful. I would imagine both
like
things are possible. Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's both.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're still writing songs too?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you still paint?
All the time. I do all the things all the time.
Okay. So how does this work, like in terms of, I think about a lot because I like to do a lot of things, but I tend to tie those up with I'm self-employed, right? And so if I'm doing all the things at the same time, it can fuel the creative energy of that, but I may not have that much time or capacity, like, right, to move things forward. And sometimes I have to be selective about, well, really, I can only work with intention on this one thing or it's never going to get done. Right. And like, what's your relationship with that kind of goal-oriented creating?
For me, I see it all as the same spokes on a vehicle that's all moving forward, or spokes on the wheel on the vehicle that's all moving forward. It all feeds into itself. I liken it a lot to remember the carnivals when we were kids. There's the box and there's all the quarters in it, and you have the little doohickey that feeds into that machine, and you put your quarter in and you're hoping that it hits just the right spot, and then it'll push all the coins
Yeah,
forward.
yeah,
Get all
yeah.
that's my life in a nutshell. I am that game. Whatever that game is called, that's me.
So you're the vehicle for that game. So where do you get your
I'm
quarters?
Yeah, I'm the game. I'm the quarters. I'm the vehicle. I'm the person playing the game. I'm all the things all at
So
once.
feeding into itself, that
Yeah,
metaphor you mentioned. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. And when I paint a painting, it's informing me as much as when I'm writing a song, as much as when I'm talking with somebody in the podcast or writing, because I wouldn't be able to write what I write if I wasn't paying attention to all these other things going on.
Mm-hmm.
All we are storytellers.
Yeah.
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 And a painting is telling a story.
I wanted you would be the first person who could speak to this that I've had on the show. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts about that.
About being a storyteller?
Yeah, and painting and the relationship to painting too. Like, how does painting tell a story? Or how is that relevant?
When I'm painting, again, this is personal experience. When I am painting, I don't have a plan in mind. Now, if somebody is saying, I want a painting from you that resembles a thing that you've painted before, then I have an idea of sort of a way to go. But when I'm painting, I don't say, today I'm going to paint this, this, and this. I just start painting. Because I know the story will evolve as I go, much like in songwriting. And in fact, I think even songwriting is a little bit more controlled, because in songwriting, most times, not every time, but most times I say, oh, I have an idea, and I'm writing to the idea. In painting, I just have a whole bunch of paint and I'm going to see what happens. And when the painting is, I find the process of painting really intriguing, because if I paint to music, it shapes it. If I paint a television program, or if I'm listening to an audible, it shapes it. And I have noticed that certain colors come out depending on the mood of whatever it is I'm doing. It's not intentional. I'm just, my psyche is, my subconscious is saying, oh, that makes sense here. When I am painting, there often are times where I'm hating everything I see. Oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. This is nothing. This is crap. And then all of a sudden I see it and I think, oh my God, I see it now. There's the story. It's coming out. And then I work to the story that arises. And yet, I suppose when I name a painting, I then provide a story. However, as a person looking at the art, I don't have any expectation on them. For me, it's whatever they interpret. Same with music. If they see a painting, and I had an experience once where I was painting while people were playing music, and I was set to the side and painting, and people were walking by, listening to music, looking at me paint. And it was fascinating, because the adults would stop and say, oh, that looks like war, or that looks like pain, or that's so dramatic, or that's so this, or that's so that. And the little kids would wander by and say, I see a pony, I see a unicorn, I see a popsicle. We bring ourselves to everything. I bring myself to the painting I'm painting. There's just no way around it. It's inescapable. But the person viewing the painting after the fact, after its creation, they're seeing it through their own experience, their own lens. And I don't get in the way of that. I just, at art shows, I'll stand there and I'll listen. I'll speak up behind people and I'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool.
I think about like being an author and stalking people as they browse in a bookstore. Just go, yes. Are they going to pick it up? Are they going to pick it up?
Well, it's fascinating.
I get that vibe from art shows, though, if I'm honest, and it puts me out a little bit when I go to like art things, because I feel like there's somebody hovering there waiting for me to have a reaction.
Do you feel that it's a judgy reaction, as if?
No, it feels kind of desperate.
Oh, interesting.
Like, engage with my thing, like it.
Oh, for me, it's more a curiosity in that I want to hear all the different perspectives. It's that life is gray. The black and white does not exist to me.
Yeah, that's a cool way to engage with it. Yeah.
Who knows? It is fascinating to see how people take in something.
Mm.
And myself included. I'll go look at a piece of art and think, huh? Or I'll think, holy crap, that's amazing, or this makes me feel this, or it reminds me of that. I mean, I don't know any more than the next person. So
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like whatever mood is present with you, whether you are channeling something in or just bringing it yourself, you embrace that and you roll with that.
I would say, yes, that would be accurate.
Yeah. Do you have like a tangible example of like how a story unfolded for you while you were painting?
I mean, it truly happens every time. I just finished a painting that I started and midway through hated with every fiber of my being and thought it was garbage. And then it turned a corner and I started to see the things in it and it started to tell me a story.
Mm.
And then my job is to let the piece tell me the story and I help the story come to life. I know that's anthropomorphizing this object, but it does. To me, it tells me something. It says I want this to be happening, or this mood is happening, or there are people saying these things in our streets, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
People show up a lot. I'm an abstract painter, but ideas of people show up a lot in my paintings. And I often wonder, are they existing in their own time and place? Are they the voices in my head? Are they my angels, my better angels? Who knows?
Yeah. Do you feel like you're capturing a moment when you're painting or a place? Or
Yes,
yeah.
all the things. It just depends, really.
Yeah.
I have paintings that some people really like that I think are terrible. I have painted over paintings before. Yeah, it's interesting. And I wasn't trained. I am the last person to say I'm any kind of expert. I know when I see something that I like, and I think I have an understanding on I don't know if it's intuitive level or what, of how colors work or don't work together, or light and dark play off each other.
So you've developed taste around it. These are things you notice in the world as you're passing through them.
Just by default of being a human being in the world, I think there are certain things that are implanted in your brain that are subconscious. The sky is up, the earth is down, that you understand how light plays with color, things like that. Yeah. But I don't know that you are actively involved in that thought process while you are working. I'm sure some painters are, especially those that went to art school.
Yeah.
They know.
I was thinking about this earlier, the idea again, because I was having a conversation with somebody, like maybe went to the grocery store, and they're talking about how they love to sing, but they're not a singer. And, they don't have that natural born talent for it. And, I was like, oh, you just touched my, one of my, I'm sensitive to that, right? Because we use this word craft sometimes, or being present, or whatever it is, but whatever you have taste in, I imagine you kind of have natural tools available to you by virtue of being human and existing, right?
Sure.
In addition to having things to study or people to teach you.
I didn't know I was a painter until I started painting. I had no idea. I, again, didn't go to school for anything like that. I just woke up one day and said, I think I'll start painting. And so I did. And that's my challenge to everyone. And I say it to people all the time when they say, oh, I probably can't do that. You don't know until you try. You might as well try. What have you got to lose?
Yeah.
Songwriting for fun, what does it matter? Now, if you're crafting for a particular audience, then again, the word craft comes in. It makes more sense. You are telling a story succinctly, hopefully, to get it, if you want to get it on the radio or to an artist. If you're writing for yourself, then write whatever moves you, because you're the one that is performing it.
Yeah. And so you're clearly if you're talking in music business terms or creative business terms, you're an artist. I get that sense from you.
I
And
put out records, so yes, I have lived in
yeah,
that
and
world. Yeah.
but you strike me as having a high degree of awareness and connectedness to how the business functions.
I,
And
I would say yes, having
and
been
I
on
made certain
board.
assumptions about you talking about when you talk about moving to Nashville and writing and being a songwriter in Nashville. I assume that you absorb this culture,
Sure.
right? And this institutional knowledge that
Nashville is a school unto itself. As a songwriter, there I believe is no better place that I've experienced to become a song crafter, other than maybe Sweden, because I spent 10 days in Sweden writing, and whew, they really know what they're doing as well. That's not
oh,
to say other places don't, but the craft of songwriting is so revered in Nashville
mhm.
that it's a master class in and of itself.
It's more analogous to going to Second City and taking these classes, right?
Or UCB or the Groundlings, yeah, for sure. And you, I can hear a song and maybe not like the song, but I
Hmm.
can appreciate the craft of the song. I know a song that has been crafted well. It may
Hmm.
not be my cup of tea, but I can acknowledge, like, wow, that's a really well written song.
Yeah, and you probably have inherent like genres or ways of songwriting that appeal to you.
As we all do. Mm.
Yeah. For you, what is that? Like what?
I honestly love all music. I really do. I grew up, my brothers are so much older than I am. My parents are way older than I am, and which goes without saying, obviously, but they're extra older. I was the accidental baby. And so the house I grew up in was rife with so many genre and era, and so that was wonderful as far as a
Mm,
musical education. And there was at some point an acknowledgement that the music I like in this moment has a grandmother and a grandfather. It has an ancestor. And so I began a journey of going backwards
mm,
to hear what inspired the people that inspired me.
hmm. Yeah, and like, what has that journey been like of music? Because I see like, so I like to explore the intersections of like mindset and our journeys as it links to success, whatever that means. But for a lot of people I talk to, success is being able to have the time and resourcing to create, right, and tell stories. And a lot of times that means plugging into a business, right, of then marketing and understanding how to reach an audience, right, have value. And I get the sense from the things that I've seen that you've gone through that journey and probably have some strong feelings about that journey.
My idea of what success is was different way back when I
Mm.
began the
Hmm.
musical journey. I believed in my heart of hearts that success is a tricky mistress, and we humans tend to move the goalpost on ourselves as to
Hmm.
what success means, and
Mm.
sometimes have very little patience for reveling in a beautiful moment, because we're constantly looking past that moment to see what might be coming next. And that is also what others cast upon us as well. Great, great,
Hmm.
great. This is great, great, great. What's coming next? What's coming
Yes.
next?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a great torture to our artistic selves, our spiritual selves. Our The psyche can be easily thwarted and made to feel less than in a world that is constantly moving the goalposts. I use that, I know,
Mm.
repeatedly, but I do think that that is the case. So one of the things that was a really beautiful moment for me is to not look to what others have done. The comparison is killer.
Mm.
I'm not Lady Gaga, but you know what?
Yeah.
Lady Gaga isn't me.
Yeah. And you speak that from like personal experience of
Yeah,
doing that, and
of course.
yeah.
And we don't know what the path will be. We can try our hardest to go a certain direction, but we cannot control the tempest going on around us. It will do what it does. And I do believe that success is a combination of talent and opportunity and perseverance. That getting up after falling down, my God, and that saying is a cliche about getting up one more time than you fall down, but it's a cliche for a reason.
One of the things I appreciate, one of the things I appreciate about the Nashville songwriting culture is they teach you that from the beginning, like that it's a failure and journey driven process, right? Like
but everything is.
Yeah, but we don't, a lot of people, we don't go in going, oh, I'm going to do this journey because it's going to be hard and I'm going to fail a whole bunch and it's going to take me years and hundreds of songs or whatever it is to reach my idea of success. If we know that, right?
I do think people have an expectation these days, not all people, but many people, because of things like reality TV, that have spent taking 200 hours of material and cut it down to 1 hour, and let's just say the 200 hours equal, I don't know, days or months or years of how long somebody works to be an overnight success.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, and unfortunately you will see a lot of failure, but that's okay. Because I think it was my brother Jeremy said to me once that the thing about perfection, the thing about being perfect at something, means that you have nowhere to go. And if we came out of the gate perfect at everything, and let's be honest, who gets to be perfect at anything anyway? There is no such thing. That how boring it would be, and what would you ever have to strive for?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
And it's what shapes us. Our falling downs are what shapes us. The scars I have from knocking into things or crashing my bike or whatever, they make up who I am. And I would argue that the falling down parts make the standing up parts that much more powerful.
Yeah, that's poetic.
Yeah, I completely destroyed that metaphor, but you get the idea.
I don't know that everybody takes the opportunity to get that far in the journey, though. Like for me, like in my own personal journey, I can't speak for other people, because my parents didn't drive me to be a perfectionist, right? And so for me, boredom was the path, right? Like everything that I engaged with was kind of easy, maybe, right? And so boredom shaped my path. I didn't really have drive to even fail at things. I didn't have opportunity to fail at things because I don't know. But when I started to engage with that, right, then it's like, okay, well, if I go take this class, if I join this association and go to this conference and take the workshops, then like instantly I'm going to be there, right? And so when you moved to Nashville, like what was that decision like when you moved from Seattle? What was that about, first of all, moving from Seattle to Nashville?
I had completed a third record I was very proud of. According to all of the reviews and all the powerful people that knew things, I was on the precipice of greatness. And then somebody absconded with a huge amount of the budget that was in my project for promoting it, and it stopped the project on a dime. And and that
I had a PR budget once, and let me tell you, that's not cheap.
Yeah,
you can make a lot of records with a PR budget.
It was a lot of money, and it was taken, and then I was screwed. So that was a terrible moment, and it required a lot of resetting, and all the things you think you are and all the things you think are supposed to happen when they stop on a dime like that, not from your own doing, but at the hand of someone else. There's a cruelty to that is so deep. And
it's like a worldview change, I imagine.
It makes you question everything, for sure. And so I was in the depths of that, and a friend of mine said, "Were you just gonna give up everything?" And my response was, I guess I thought I was supposed to be all these things, and that's obviously not going to happen. I can't afford to promote this record. I can't afford to go anywhere. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs.
Yeah.
I owe all these people money, and I have this beautiful product that I can't really do anything with. And this was pre, the Spotify's and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was a puppy, and she said to me, "Well, that's crazy. You should keep writing. You're a great writer." And I said,
Mm.
"What's the point?" I mean, I was feeling sorry for
Yeah.
myself.
Well, we put a lot of pressure when we start on the first thing or on that one thing, right?
Yeah,
It's everything.
absolutely.
I've done that.
Yeah, and I was in the gate. The bell was about to go off,
Yeah.
and I was about to be let out of the gate and just have that moment.
Mm.
And so anyway, I said, well, okay. She said, I have this friend in Nashville who's a writer and works at Curb Records and is really wonderful. His name is RJ Meacham. You
Mm.
you should write with him. And I said, well, okay, fine. So I went to Nashville, wrote with RJ, kept going back and forth from Seattle to Nashville over the course of a year. And eventually RJ said, you're a good writer. What have you got to do? You should move here.
Mm.
And he said, there's a lot of opportunity here to learn and all that. And I figured, why not? So there I went, and I stayed there 13 years. And when I got there, I realized, well, I was a big fish in a small pond in Seattle. I had a lot of successes and things were really going well, but I knew enough to know that when I got there, the level that I had the level that was there in comparison to what I had just come from was beyond my imagination, and that I
Mm-hmm.
should be quiet, pay attention, and learn.
Those are good instincts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I had garnered a lot of awards and things in Seattle, but
I saw a couple ASCAP awards. That's
I mean,
interesting.
Seattle Music Awards, I swept those. I had the Sirius XM Album of the Year. I mean, I was Artist of the Year for Femme Music, and so I just I had all this stuff.
These are big positioning statements, by the way. If I introduced you that way, right? Like that would be
There,
the
yeah.
glitzy thing.
I just showed up in Nashville, and I'm not saying this to toot a horn. I'm saying this to me. This seems like a smarter way to go. I was of service when I arrived. I went and volunteered for places. I listened to what other people had to say. I went to songwriting camps to hear great professional hit writers talk about the craft, and I
which is pretty awesome.
Oh, there's nothing like it. It really, it was going to college all over again, really.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. And I met wonderful people, and little by little. And during that time, I had people say to me, and I think this is important to point out, I had people say to me, oh, you'll not get a cut without a publishing deal. Oh, because, I had my own publishing and I was an artist in my own right.
Yeah.
And that rhetoric was being repeated often.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't believe that. That wasn't my story. I didn't take that and say, oh, I'll put that coat on. That fits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I held out, and eventually I did. I got major cuts, with having my own publishing, because I believed I could.
Yeah.
Half the battle in life is believing that something is possible.
Yeah.
The
And
idea of manifestation.
for people who don't understand, because I don't get into business mechanics too much, but to understand the idea of keeping your publishing, how big of a deal is that?
It's a big deal. It is a big deal. That isn't to say that some pub deals are fantastic and some publishers will really fight for you. But again, that's giving away half your money. It's the same reason why when I started painting, I didn't do a lot of gallery stuff. I did it all myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how publishing works these days, but I remember if you had a publishing deal, you would get a budget, right, to record demos, which is a pretty cool thing. I imagine you had to recoup those expenses, I suppose, was the downside.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, they're hedging their bets more than you are, because they're pouring out tons and tons of money that they know in all likelihood they'll never see again. Yeah. And again, publishers who are doing a great job, who are getting songs heard by artists and producers, that's wonderful. But the reality is there's so many songs it's that chicken and egg thing.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So if let's say, so you're living in Nashville, you're writing, you're co-writing, you probably knew people who had publishing deals.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
okay, so how many songs does somebody write in a year
Uh,
if they're just doing it?
I would say the average songwriter who, like myself, uh, is writing upwards of 2 songs a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah, so at least like 200 to 400 songs a year you're probably writing, yeah.
600-ish, I would
Yeah, I'm trying to be generous. So like if I'm somebody who's written 5 to 20 songs and I think I should be successful now, like that's what I'm
up
comparing
against.
myself against. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of songs in the sea for sure.
Okay,
I
so
I
if I'm
personally
writing
have
six,
written
if I'm writing, yeah, if I'm writing, so how many have you written?
thousands of songs.
Okay, so you've written
They're not all
1,000.
good.
No, but this is my just driving at for people who are more on the aspiring end of this, right? Like for
Yeah.
mindset, right? Like it's a journey, right? And like how many cuts or songs did you write that have ever brought you money from that process?
Very few, and also you never know where a song will end up. I just had a cut on an artist, a young woman named Quinn, and she cut a song that we wrote 4 or 5 years ago. You never know. And of course now with streaming and all that, it makes tons of sense. Whereas
It's not worth what it was 10, 20
not
years ago.
not
Yeah.
even close. Not
Yeah.
even close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Unless you're film TV world, I
I
suppose.
think that is the last refuge.
So and that's how I think about it too, the last refuge. And
Yeah.
hopefully it's a growing refuge, right?
Yeah, who knows? I've got to figure out how to write songs for books. People
Wouldn't
find
that be cool?
yeah.
You know, like there's a strange dynamic. So so I shifted my focus from songwriting to writing books, and that's the world I'm in because it got to the point where as an artist I spent more acquiring fans than they would ever pay for my music, right? And that at some point, like, okay, math has to have a place in my life, right? And so writing books, there's still math that works, right? But I still love writing and performing songs. But you think about these things, right? This idea of refuges, but songwriting is an interesting niche of storytelling and business because it's the only thing that's really federally managed how much you make.
Yeah.
It's totally bizarre.
Like for anything, if you're going into something to be rich and famous, I believe you are likely going in with the wrong mindset to start with.
Yeah. I think that just even a reasonable mindset of I could make 50,000 a year, how much work that takes.
It takes a lot of work. It takes a hustle, and you have to be outperforming, and it's a lot. It is not an easy path, the path of an artist, and it's frustrating, I think, for the people that don't understand the artists in their lives. That they think, oh, why don't you have a real job? And the idea is, well, I actually have about 12 jobs. I'm working constantly. So then, and I have done the 9 to 5, and it was lovely to have a real paycheck, but it was soul crushing for me. And I do think that some people are not, it just doesn't serve them. Some people are great sitting at a desk and having that be their world. But there has to be room for all of us to exist.
Yeah. Well, I think money is like making money in a day job. It's like a proxy for buying time later to do something.
That's a good way to look at it. You mean environment?
And so that means if you want the time right now, you don't need as much money, right? And then I think about health, but health
I think,
impacts.
you have to be able to pay your health care. You need a roof over your head. Obviously, you need food and water. If you have children, that's a whole other story. I don't have children.
Yeah.
But the idea that money somehow buys happiness, I don't know that I believe that adage. I do think people that have money have less worries about certain things.
Yeah.
But then they bring on a whole new set of worries.
Yeah, if you're making money to defer happiness, that's probably not a virtuous cycle. But
Yeah, my friend Chuck Cannon calls it the God-shaped hole. If
oh,
you
Chuck.
Yeah, if you need to fill yourself up with things and there's never enough money to buy enough things to make yourself feel good, then there's something else going on.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
placation,
Yeah.
is,
I think
is
you have to build pretty strong self foundations to be resilient in an art world.
in the world period, end of story. Yeah.
But you're kind of confronted or forced to as like a foundational step of doing that journey. And that's kind of a healthy thing.
Yeah. And depression does come to artists quite easily, I think. It is, it's not like I don't wake up some days and think, why am I doing this? Am I an insane person?
So, but there's joy in that, right? So, like, you've written thousands of songs. Like, how much joy did that buy? Like, how many moments of happiness and contentment?
Lovely moments,
Yeah.
for sure. And songs that I really believe in. Some songs, silly songs, some dumb, some terrible. But yeah, those moments of creation are powerful. I'm building my mansion in heaven, as they say. It doesn't necessarily pay the rent, but and when somebody responds to something you've created, man, oh man. And when I'm on a stage and I'm performing, that feeling is that communion with the audience and myself, and whatever you believe to be the thing bigger than you, it's all working in tandem, in my opinion, at least through me and in me and out of me. That's incredible.
Yeah.
You cannot buy that feeling.
Yeah, that's great. And so that is like an element of it, right? This desire to connect with others, and part of our creating is that, right? And I imagine, like, it's not always as satisfying as you hope it would be, right?
How do you mean?
I think about, like, when one of the things I realized on stage once is I was sitting there and, like, all these people have something to say, and right now it's just one direction. And what I'm actually wanting and what I actually need in this moment is that two-way connection. And I'm investing all my energy on being on the stage and giving one direction.
But is it one direction, or are you, when you think,
There's a certain, ask your,
well,
delve into it.
when you're performing a song,
Yeah.
this is what gets back to what we talked about in the beginning, like truth with a capital T. When you're performing a song and it comes from a truthful place, whether or not the people in the audience are responding to the story per se, they're absolutely responding to the truth with a capital T.
Yeah.
They're feeling that. And you then become a proxy for a feeling that they may not know how to articulate.
Yeah.
And so you may not even realize it, what's happening.
I
Not
believe,
you, but the
I,
Lord.
no, yeah, and, I believe that. But I think the point I was making is I put all my energy being the messenger and not making space to have that reciprocal conversation in general, right? And so it affected the way I show up, right? And in fact, I had unmet needs in that process of dealing with it. Yeah.
Do you think that's a mindset thing, that if you were on stage and you were performing and you opened to the conduit of receiving?
I don't think the problem was being on stage as such. I think those moments were fine. It was that I wasn't making space in my life, enough attention. And so all my energy was focused on those goalposts that were moving and not actually on, like, meeting my own needs.
But it's a beautiful self-awareness moment to have, though, right?
Yeah. And, but those are things I see a lot of times, right? I see it reflected, whether I'm just projecting my story or not. But sometimes I hear that, right? It's like we're putting so much effort into the chasing, right? Sometimes the moment is
dragon.
Forgotten. Yeah.
The dragon.
Yeah.
He's a powerful beast.
And ego is like getting feedback. So Nashville and other forums like that, you have an opportunity to get feedback. And sometimes you get really, like, that kind of feedback that drives you forward and propels you for years. right? You ever felt that?
I have come to decide that if somebody hates you, that they are in fact passionate about what you're doing.
Mm. Mm. Hmm. That's an interesting way to look at it. And
That
yeah,
it inspired them to the point of frothing at the mouth in your direction. It's like, wow, thank you for allowing me to inspire you in such a way. You would hope that it would be more happy and positive and all that, but it's still, you have you have invoked something within them.
you made them feel something, and they were paying attention. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a skill.
And they're probably, again, it's that thing of, if I am angry outward, it's because I can't touch some sort of pain inward. So
Mm.
the truth of what you're saying is likely touching a truth within them that they just aren't comfortable yet with touching. And so
Yeah,
they have to attack. It's
yeah,
very scary to go inside oneself.
yeah, yeah. I think it's kind of cool now. Like, I love it.
But it's a journey. It's
Yeah,
a journey, and not everyone, some people are never prepared for it.
yeah,
And some people, learn how to get there along the way, and some people, for some in some miraculous way, are born with the ability, and it's all different levels of that.
yeah. And sometimes I wonder, like, maybe we all born with it, and then we kind of
Forget.
forget. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a 4.5-year-old, and we've been very intentional about, not trying to clutter or, toxify that environment, and which is a tricky balance, right?
Absolutely.
But
I love it. 4.5. You said that's such a great age.
yeah, but everything she's saying, like, she speaks the truth, capital T,
Absolutely.
right now. And it's like,
Yes.
I'm going to be so sad when she forgets that, right?
Yeah. That's such
Yeah.
a lovely age. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're still having this journey, and you're doing interesting things, and are you still dive into your discomfort, you
Constantly.
find?
Constantly.
Yeah.
That's part
So
of with the podcast.
yeah.
I don't just talk to people with whom I have a reverie, with whom I agree with. I try and talk to people I don't agree with, not
Mm,
to get into some sort of a fight, but to have a conversation about things that I don't know, or feelings I don't know. I say this a lot. I don't know me until I know you, because we're just reflecting back at each other. So how do I know what I'm thinking until I know what I'm not thinking?
mm,
If
mm,
that,
mm.
if that makes sense.
I'm just picturing one of those moments where there's a sound effect in the background while you raise the eyebrow.
Bum, bum, bum.
Dung.
And I really enjoy it. Those are, honestly, for me, those are some of my most delightful conversations with people where we could not be further from seeing eye to eye.
Yeah, that's fun. I I don't know if I wish I had more of that or not, but I love that you know that about yourself.
It's a lot about holding space,
Yeah,
because you have boundaries, like with anything and anyone, and holding space so that they feel like they can say what they have to say, and then you
yeah,
say what you have to say. It's not an argument. It may be a debate,
yeah,
but yelling during an interview probably would not go very far.
yeah. There's somebody cleaning the awnings there. um,
I love
it's
Bellingham
a
so
it's a
much.
tremendous gift to give somebody a space to actually be heard and to reflect that. Yeah.
I think it's important.
I don't know
All
if
right,
you
you're
can
in
hear that.
Bellingham. You said I love Bellingham. It's in the
I am
summer.
in.
Yeah,
So you went to college in Bellingham.
I went to Western. Summer in Bellingham is, in fact, when Nashville summers would be so overwhelming with the humidity and such, I used to go and rent a condo in Fairhaven and spend the summer in Fairhaven chilling out, because
Hmm, that's
that's
perfect. I'm just down. I'm like a mile away from Fairhaven right now.
nice.
Yeah.
Love it. The
And the
market,
sun's coming out.
everything's probably shut down right now, but it's Bellingham's a great city.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's very inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Some of my best boyfriends have come from Bellingham.
that's a high water mark for Bellingham. My wife's from Bellingham, so
Yeah.
I'm very happy with Bellingham.
Yeah, it's a good town.
Yeah, and so moving forward, what's next for Susan Ruth?
All the things. The podcast is still going strong. It's growing exponentially, which is wonderful. And keep painting. And I would like to get more into the sketch writing and the comedy writing. I've got a screenplay I'm finishing up. I've got a couple television show ideas. So when I'm trying to put those in a sort of pitchable order, just moving forward, whatever that means.
What does that bring up for you to be pitching things and writing things for a purpose like that?
I've been like that my whole life. Everything has always been for a purpose. So, and stating that I hope this happens.
Yeah. But it's fun even if it doesn't happen.
It is fun. And especially on the projects where I'm writing with someone else. My level 5 conservatory, there's a woman that I was also taking it, or was also in the class, and Tiffany L. She's hilarious, and I really enjoy writing with her. And so we're now starting to write some stuff together. Finding a wonderful collaborator is the bomb.
It is pretty magical.
Have you seen the Middleditch and Schwartz on Netflix?
No.
If you like improv, I highly recommend it.
Sure. So say it again. What is it called?
Middleditch and Schwartz. So
okay.
Thomas Middleditch and Ben Schwartz.
Okay, and that's on Netflix.
Yes, I've now watched it 4 times, and I'm delighted every time. It is wonderful. Yeah.
Sometimes I read comedy writing books or those exercises because it's very close in a way to songwriting. But it's all about truth, capital T, and I love hearing people's truth and looking at comedy that way, right?
There was some famous quote, and I can't remember who said it. Death is easy, comedy is hard.
I mean, they definitely play up from a marketing angle that mythology of the depressed comic, right? And they're bleeding on stage for you, kind of thing, right?
Sure.
So how do you get the support and balance you need to create and be in that space all the time?
You mean emotionally, or?
Yeah.
I would say 97% of the time, I feel very grounded in my choices, my life choices. My family is lovely. They never told. I was the youngest child, so they never told me I couldn't do something.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my friends, the people who love me, see that this makes me happy. Sometimes they say, "Well, why don't you go get a real job? You probably, you could go on a trip to Tahiti." And I think, well, if I was in Tahiti, I'd probably be writing I'd be doing what I do. You see what I mean? Wherever you go, there you are. So, but most of my feelings of being okay with these choices come from myself, not from outside influence.
That's great.
And that was hard won over time, but here we are.
Here we are. That's
Nobody
cool.
gets to tell me who I am. That's my choice.
I'm
writing the story. I'm writing the story of me.
I'm writing the story of me. The story. Yeah. Here we are. I feel like that's the title of this episode, probably. Here we are. It's very Hey Human kind of thing. So for people who want to know more about you, how can they find you?
So many places. SusanRuth.com if you want a general overview of me, and my artwork is there, as well as music. And HeyHumanPodcast.com to know all about the podcast. And of course, it's on all the podcast places, including Spotify. And yeah, I mean, IMDb. I have an IMDb page for anything acting that I stumble across. And that's a bit. I'm on all the social media, obviously, Facebook, Instagram. I have both Susan Ruthism, SUSANRUTHISM, is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and then Hey Human Podcast is on Facebook and Instagram. And I try and use different content for all the different places.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of work.
And yeah, but invest in yourself.
Yeah. So you enjoy, you find a way to enjoy.
I'm not
engaging
a huge
with all
fan
that.
of social media. It's a necessary evil in my mind. And I think eventually you get to be in a place, if you're lucky, where you can be like a Bill Murray that doesn't need social media.
Yeah.
But until that day comes, they are good places to promote what's happening in my life.
Do you have like a mailing list? Do you invest in that?
I have a mailing list. I send out mailers about every 4 or 5 months. I try to keep it interesting. I don't just talk about myself. A little bit I talk about myself, but a lot of it I talk about other things in the world and maybe what some of my friends are doing. And you can sign up for that at susanruth.com. Also, currently, there's a podcast called Sentinels, Point of No Return. And I'm 6 characters on that serial podcast with some of these just incredible actors. And it's a sci-fi story. It's wonderful.
So you're acting in that voice?
I am.
That's fun. What's it called again?
It's called Sentinels, Point of No Return. And it's in all the podcast places as well. Written and directed by Mike Disa. And the cast is extraordinary.
Fantastic. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. I love sci-fi.
Yeah. Hey, I do too. I write sci-fi, so it's fun.
The best.
Yeah. All right. Well, Susan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Ethan, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me and for reaching out. I really appreciate it. I don't often get interviewed. So it's a fun table turn.
It's fun. Cool.
Have a lovely day.
You too. I'll stop to record.